Does anyone play The Show? Have you ever played The Show? I'm sure all Marlins fans will be buying this year's 2023 version of The Show. The Marlins have a cover athlete, and it is our man Jazz Chisholm Jr., cover athlete for The Show 2023. Reaction to that, plus further discussion around the Bleier Barnes move, and we're going to get into potentially the changes of strategy around bullpen management with Skip Schumacher at the helm, plus also thinking about whether the Marlins are now done for the offseason. All on today's Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This is your daily Marlins podcast. I am your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up on Twitter at Miami Marlins _UK. If you're listening to the pod, hit subscribe there too. Leave a review. Why not? And there is a YouTube channel. It is Locked On Marlins. And yes, you will see, if you are watching, the UK GOAT is in the house. Sean Barrett. I teased it out yesterday. I knew he would be back. Sean, how we doing, brother?
I'm not too bad, Pete. It's been some interesting moves recently, so plenty to get into.
There has been some interesting moves, some interesting news. This offseason continues to deliver. It was a slow burn, it's fair to say, but the offseason continues to rumble on for the Marlins, for certain. But before we get into it, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. You can visit fanduel.com/lockedon today to get started. More about those guys later on. Sean Barrett, where are we going to start? We are starting with our man, Jazz Chisholm Jr., the Bahamian Prince. Absolute stud. And it was teased out, it's fair to say. There were some teasers dropping for a couple of days. But Jazz Chisholm Jr. is on the cover of the show. We're both in our late 30s-ish. How excited is this news? How exciting is this news for you, personally? But more so, just what this means. That the Marlins and Jazz Chisholm Jr. on the cover of a video game. Big news, I think.
It's huge news. For me personally, somebody who hasn't played MLB The Show since, I think, the 2010 copy.
Okay. It's time a refresh then, right? It's
not that big of a deal for me personally. I don't think I've known a console that would be able to play such a modern game nowadays. Mm-hmm. But for the Marlins, this is huge. We've talked about Jazz, about being the star of the team, and how the league have slowly but surely drip-fed him into the national audience. And this, while it's a computer game, it's not technically the league. It's still further sort of growth of Chisholm as a star in baseball. There was quite a bit of media, fan sort of disappointment that it wasn't, a Yankee or a Dodger or this player or that player. For me, I don't think this is a case of it's a performance-based decision. No. They're marketing a very exciting character to the people that play computer games, mostly children and young people. And for me, that's the reason why the league have done that. You could put Mike Trout on the cover if you wanted to. He's been a fantastic player for many years. Yeah. He's vanilla as hell, though. And it would not sell a single copy. Jazz will sell copies just because he is such a bombastic character.
He is. For me, he's the absolute perfect choice. I don't know why anyone's bothering to discuss. I mean, firstly, is this really a major discussion point? To your point, probably not. Like, it's just the cover star. But for Jazz, he'll be seeing this as an honor, but as well, like, he's the perfect choice. Everyone loves Jazz. Like I've said many times, Jazz Chisholm Jr. was voted in that to me, and he plays for the Marlins, by the way. And do you remember how they vote? You get votes for the All-Star game. It's basically a local, popularity contest of you can vote by 5 million times for any player, and you just keep voting day after day. So the biggest fan bases vote in all of their players. No, Jazz Chisholm was voted in. That says to me he has national, worldwide appeal. Look at Jazz. Look at the way he operates. Look at the way he dresses. Look at on social media. Everything about Jazz is everything that baseball should be pushing right now to push the ticket. To your point, though, Sean, it isn't about performance. I mean, let's be honest. When Jazz is on the field, it's good, no doubt. But he doesn't have a sustained and lengthy career where it's like profound success and et cetera, et cetera. Jazz has still got some things to prove on the field, no doubt. But in terms of a guy that can help market baseball, and as well, there's backstory too, right? A guy from the Bahamas, looking like how he does, playing for the Marlins, an absolute stud in everything that he does. It's the perfect choice. I don't know anyone's whinging or worrying about this one. And yes, what I would say, the main name I did hear talked about, which was like, I'm okay with Jazz, but it should have been, and the player that was most mentioned was Julio Rodriguez, I would say. He was the most mentioned name. But Julio okay, he had a great year last year, no doubt. But Jazz has got more swag. He's got him covered, no doubt about it. So I think they made the right choice with this one. I'm going to, just on the game itself, I've owned one copy of the show. When the pandemic kicked off, I bought a PlayStation specifically so I could get the show. When we were all craving for anything to do in the pandemic. It's fair to say I haven't played much of it recently. But, yeah, I probably won't buy this one either. But nevertheless, Jazz is the face of MLB The Show 20. I think he is the perfect choice. And who knows, he may be, and I don't know this because I haven't researched it, but he may be the first two-time cover athlete by the time his career is done. Maybe someone else has done that. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Anyway, Sean, let's come away from video games and popularity contests. Let's start talking about the Marlins and the blockbuster trade that dropped yesterday. I had to hop on, do an emergency pod. King Richard Bleier traded to the Red Sox, and the Marlins pick up a reliever in exchange. It was a bit of a unique trade, it felt like, where it was some money exchanging hands. There was a couple of relievers, one going one way, one going the other. But what was your overall assessment of this trade here?
Yeah, it was interesting, wasn't it, in the idea that both teams are eating the money for the players that they're trading. So it's an odd one. For me, it's interesting because I like Bleier. I think he's a very serviceable reliever. I like that ground ball sort of profile that he brought. That's sort of similar to Sandy. Obviously, Sandy's got more strikeout potential. But for me, this is a clear movement away from a guy that's a ground baller that requires a solid defense, which the Marlins had last year,
Good point.
That can strike out more people. The ball's not going to be in play as much, and therefore that's probably going to help the Marlins a little bit more than Bleier would, because the defense it's not going to be a bad defense. That's not what I'm saying, but it's not going to be as good as it was last year. So maybe guys that have a bit more strikeout potential are going to help the Marlins, and maybe Bleier was, it's a case of all those ground balls, a couple of them are going to get muffed through the season. My biggest concern is the team have clearly recognised that and done something about it. But we've got Sandy signed up for years. You'd think they'd want the defence to be a good defence behind a ground baller because you've got Sandy as your ace. So that's probably my biggest takeaway and concern.
Do you know what? It's funny you mentioned Sandy because you started talking about this. I was going to ask you about Sandy. So we're aligned. That's good. And I was thinking about this, like this defensive change, and it's, we can't get away from this. They will have stepped back defensively. They are going to step back defensively, and the offset is we get the sticks, we get more offense. So that has to happen. So it is what it is. On Sandy specifically, what I've been thinking about is, are we going to see a different Sandy Alcantara in 2023? Where I think Sandy can do whatever he wants, where he's that good, he'll throw these kind of pitches that draw the contact because he wants to go deep. He wants to go 8-9 innings, and with that, you can't strike everyone out because you're just going to run out of gas and there's going to be too many pitches. So in many cases, he's pitching to contact on purpose to try and 4-pitch inning, 5-pitch inning, bang, 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 ground balls, and out of there. I wonder if we see a completely different Sandy Alcantara in 2023, where all of a sudden it becomes K's galore and he just goes on the hunt. Because this is the thing, when he's in these games, when he's pitching in the 8th, all of a sudden he's dialing up the heat. Like, he's holding it in reserve. Because he shows that. He gets stronger as it goes on. I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking this, but I am just wondering if Sandy starts to change his approach in his game, the type of pitcher he becomes, and starts to focus more on up in that K rate. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that one?
It's an interesting idea because normally you see it go the other way around. I remember when Jose Fernandez first came up, he was striking out people left, right, centre because he had that stuff. But because he was on an innings limit, because he was younger, then it was a case of he was getting to the 4th, 5th inning and he's getting pulled. This is back when that didn't happen in baseball. People would go 6, 7, 8. So the idea that Sandy would do the opposite and start trying to be less efficient with his pitches because strikeouts are going to bump up your innings and your pitches. I think Sandy has got that raw stuff. I think he does have the stuff that he could strike out more than 9 per 9. Obviously, he doesn't really because he's pitching to contact. He wants to go long. He wants to be that horse. Yeah. That's all well and good if he is going to strike out more people, be more adventurous with his pitching, and then only go 6 or 7 each night. If the bullpen behind him picks him up.
Yeah.
If Sandy pitches 7 scoreless innings every night and then the bullpen blows it, if I'm Sandy, I'm very quickly going sod it. I'm pitching 8 and 9 again.
That's what happened last year, though, right?
Yeah,
it was. He said, "I'm going to be the starter and the closer." That was his mentality, like to come out. Sorry to cut you off, but like that, you could see that with Sandy that he was there trying to go 9 because he knew the bullpen was a little sketchy at times. But I think it's something to keep an eye on. I'm intrigued to see what Sandy is in 23, coming off the back of a Cy Young Awards and a stunning season and a year where the defense steps backwards and no shifts. Like, there's a lot that's changing here for Sandy, so I'm really intrigued. Probably something for us to dig into on another episode. Want to talk about FanDuel shortly, but Sean, I wanted to then segue us into, which is kind of where we were going, the bullpen and the general makeup and maybe the approach for Skip Schumacher in terms of his management of the bullpen. It's something that I was thinking about yesterday. Whether there may be a move away from the traditional approach of a 7th inning guy, an 8th inning guy, and a 9th inning guy, and everyone's got their innings and their slots and their roles. Is Skip going to go about things differently? So I'll let you ponder on that. But guys, as I've already teased out, this episode is brought to you by good friends over at FanDuel. And this year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. And we are delighted and excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because, well, they're the #1 sportsbook in America. So there you go. #1 network, #1 sportsbook. Feels like a nice fit. Anyway, if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They've got so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. First off, download FanDuel right now so you can bet Super Bowl 57, baby, with a no-sweat first bet. So you love that. You'll get up to $3 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Yep, you heard that right. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. That's the no sweat first bet. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. Anything at all, FanDuel have got you covered. It's a safe and secure app and super easy to use. And you get paid your winnings instantly. Yes, sir. So you can join FanDuel today at fan/locked on to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I absolutely nailed that ad as well. That was wonderful. Wonderful. Sean, talk to me about this bullpen now, because I think the Marlins have added someone that can add some leverage innings here. Floro is back. He's healthy. Okert still around. Tanner Scott, I think, could take a leap. How are you feeling about this leverage pen now for the Marlins?
It's getting there, isn't it? It is a case of, we talk all the time about the idea of the Marlins piecing together a bullpen of misshapen parts and put together as cheaply as possible, just because that's the way you can get a mid-tier bullpen doing it that way. I think bringing in Barnes, a guy that has closer experience, is a good thing. You look at the numbers last year and you can have some concern, but that second half, I think, was more sort of typical for him. So I think you work with that, and you look at Flora as well. The numbers last year weren't particularly good. You take away that first month where, coming back from injury, the numbers look good. So I think now with Scott as well, you've got a guy that's got elite stuff. Can he walk people less than, 4.5 per 9, hopefully.
By the way, just on Tanner Scott, go and have a look at his Baseball Savant page for the listeners tuning in. Sean, you probably saw it as well the other day, but it is a wonderful Baseball Savant page. There is one slider in particular that stands out, and it is the walks.
The 1% walk percent. Oh, yes.
Yeah, that is not. It's not. I mean, it is what you would expect, but yeah, I mean, everything else just pops off on his profile, but it does pop off as well in terms of the walk issue. But and it really highlights how much of an issue it is. And if you can get that under control, mate, I'm really buying into Tanner Scott at the moment. I'm just, as I've been thinking about it more and more, I'm just getting more excited about what he could be, because the stuff is elite, just needs a bit more control. And then there's an absolute stud left-handed reliever there, I think, for the Marlins. So, yeah, I don't know. Are they done, though? Bullpen-wise, are they done? Or are we still looking to add one guy, two guys? I mean, we keep hearing Alex Reyes. We keep hearing it because I keep saying it. No one's actually said anything about Alex Reyes, but I keep thinking about him. Are they still looking to add that, or is Barnes the final piece in this jigsaw and they're just going to roll with it?
I mean, at this point, I think that's the biggest move they're going to make, unless it is Reyes and they bring in Reyes. And to be honest, what do we know about his health? We don't know a lot. If it does come to the team, would that be on a major league deal? Would that be him starting the season straight away from spring training? Who knows? I think the Barnes move is the last biggest move that they'll make with the bullpen. And yeah, there might be a few small pieces coming in, spring training invites. You're going to piece together. I think anybody could come into the Marlins right now and have a great showing in spring and earn themselves a spot on a major league team, or at the very least start the season in AAA and see time at the major league level. I think as far as general moves, overall moves, there are still those nagging doubts. You want a first baseman backup. You want that centre field sorted. But for opening day, if the team opened the season as it's currently constructed, I've said this before, I'd be excited.
Yeah.
I think there's a team there that can be competitive. And I know people rag on that idea of, we only want competitive baseball. Yes, that's all we do want. Get me to July, get me to August, get me to September with meaningful games being played. And I can get excited about it rather than slogging through the late season, watching games when I know we're going to lose 90 games. This is, at the moment, a competitive team in my eyes. And I think there's a potential for moves to be made. Having one obvious hole that you can just plug in and fix in June or July is kind of a positive, isn't it? You've got one spot you can improve on, and if they get to June, July, and in a position that's necessary, then that's super exciting.
I'm with you. I'm feeling positive. I was equally. I've listened back, and this is the thing, right? Everything's on record with Locked On. You can go back and listen. What did I say last year? Marlins went and got Stallings to fill that void. Joey Wendell, he was an all-star. Went and acquired him. Avisel Garcia, threw the money at him. Jorge Soler just come off the back of a World Series MVP. I was bullish about the Fish, and it fell flat, clearly. But the reality is, I was bullish about that offseason, and now they've added again to it in terms of, there's 3-4 different guys that have been added. What I would say, though, Sean, is Derek Jeter's Marlins roster has been dismantled pretty quickly, it seems. Like, Jeter's gone, and the core, his foundations, I would say, are at pace too. Like, Bleier, was a Jeter guy that was acquired in his time, was, veteran guy. Miguel Rojas, obviously big part of that period too, predated Jeter too, but like, we're seeing quite a significant turnover now in the past 18 months, I would say, since Kim's really taken the reins of this Marlins organization from the GM perspective. And we're seeing a lot of turnover. Like, this team and the identity of it feels very, very different now to what it did 18 months ago, I think. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the clear change from toolsy guys to contact, high ceiling guys has been clearer in the off season. Whether or not you want to say it's Jeter's guys, although a lot of these guys that have left are Jeter guys, or whether you want to say the guys that were part of a team that lost 90 games 2 years running. Like, if you don't make changes to that, then what are you saying? That you're happy to keep losing 90 games?
The record is not indicative of the talent on the roster, right?
Yeah, the team's changed, and it needed some changes.
Yeah,
I would like one more move, but as it stands, this is a team that is going to be interesting, and it's going to make some noise. And as a Marlins fan, that's all you can ever ask for.
It really is. I saw The Athletic graded. There's a couple of things coming out from The Athletic right now, and it's always a great source of information and articles, one of which being Keith Law's top 100 prospects. We're going to cover that on another episode because that needs more time. I'm looking forward to it. But I did see they had an off-season grade per team, and the Marlins, I don't know, have you seen that? Yeah, you've seen it. Okay. So the Marlins were given a grade C, which I would say was one of the lowest grades of all of the teams, some of which were much lower. But the Marlins were definitely in the bottom third, I would say, of grading. Without digging into the Athletics grade itself, where would you go with this, Sean? Right now, the offseason that we've had, and it's been an intriguing offseason in many ways, but where would you land on now at this point?
See, now I'm not too far off. I mean, the C was, very low down. I think it was like the 20th sort of spot as a team. So that, I feel, is probably a little bit too low. But C plus for me, that grade to me says you did okay and you tried.
Yeah.
Like, that's if you can get a C plus quite easily. Did you try and did you do okay? That's a C plus.
Yeah.
I think that major move, that filling of the centre field spot, you could jump that straight up to sort of high B, low A. As it is, these gradings mean nothing. At the end of the day, the only thing that will be a true test of the way that this team was built is how many wins it has at the end of the season.
And in reality, Sean, that is how we should assess every team. But of course, the record is not always indicative of the talent on the roster. Absolutely love that phrase. I love that from Kim. And I love the way she keeps doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down on that. But you're totally right. That is the barometer. That's how you measure success, talent, whatever it might be, health. I think C feels slightly too low as well. I think the Marlins have had a nice offseason, to be honest with you. Like, I like the moves they've made. And I think really when you look at the way everything's shaping up with the offense, this effectively, and this is what Danny Rodriguez talked about with me last week, this hinges on, can Avisel Garcia and Jorge Soler deliver what they've been paid to do? And the rest of it, all the other moves that have been made is to just build around those guys. And if those guys do what they should do, then this Marlins offense is interesting. One other point, just on the offense and the lineup specifically. I was thinking about this and looking into some numbers. Would you believe, Sean? I was looking into splits. I was looking at the Jazz Chisholm splits. What did I see? With, no runners on base, Jazz wasn't that great last year. With runners on base or in scoring position, he was absolutely insane. And I think we've always felt that he wasn't the optimal leadoff guy. Yes, speed-wise he is, but the type of hitter he is isn't conducive, I would say, to prototypical leadoff guy. The question I've got for you, though, is where should Jazz hit in this lineup now, in this revamped lineup? I think Arias is going to be right up the top. Every other spot is open. So if you, and let's assume it's a righty going, by the way, where would you be hitting Jazz to kind of make the most out of everything that Jazz offers?
See, now most people want him in the 4 spot, aren't they? I think that's where most people have him, in the cleanup spot. I'd have him at 3. I think I'd do Arias, Segura, Jazz, and then Coop.
Okay.
Now, I know that I'm putting Coop in the cleanup spot, and that's not just because I think Coop can play there, but it adds in a lefty-righty split top of your lineup, and I think I value that quite a lot. Even though there's not so much of a one-inning guy, a loogie guy coming in just to get that one lefty out, I still think balancing your lineup with lefty-righty gives a challenge to a pitcher.
It does.
And I think, I'm not going to complain if Jazz is 4, obviously, but I think he is a 3-4 hitter. Then you put Avi and Soler behind them. The big guys got to go. But in the ideal world, Reyes and Segura getting on, and then Jazz is just hitting him in would be, or Coop cleaning up. That would be perfect for me.
Could be. I'm intrigued to see the way they go about it. I think Arias is the clear leadoff hitter. I put it out yesterday, just playing it on Twitter, and I think the main feedback was aligned to you, Jazz, not in the 4 spot, but in the 3 hole, which I think is interesting. The question then is, where do you hit Mean Gene Segura? He hit a lot at the kind of 5, more like 6, 7 in the order for the Phillies last year. So I then started to think about Arias, Coop, Jazz 1, 2, 3, which I think is intriguing too. Because Coop's contact gap hitter, he can definitely get Arias in from if he's on base, I think. So I think that could be a nice match. It wouldn't shock me as well if Wendell ends up there as well in the 2 spot and they kind of just go really lefty heavy in some parts. But yeah, to your point, it's interesting. Let's not forget Soler spent some time leading off as well. I mean, clearly that was in Don Mattingly's world, I guess, and his lineup construction. But, Soleri's there to hit bombs, and ideally you've got guys on base in front of him. And actually, what we saw with Jazz is he's really good if there's runners on. And so, play to Jazz's strengths, play to Soler's strengths. But this Marlins roster comes down to, this offense anyway, for me, comes down to, if Jazz is healthy, he's going to absolutely light it up. Can Avi and Soler do what they're paid to do? And if they are, the rest will just fall into place, in my opinion. We've run out of time, Sean. We haven't got time to talk about bullpen management. So we'll have to do that next time when we speak, which will be in the coming days, I guess. I'm interested. For those listening, what do you think the Marlins are going to do in this? Is it going to be designated closer? Is it going to be closer by committee? If so, who's going to be getting save opportunities? That's the way to phrase it. Guys, thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. Thank you to the UK GOAT. As always, Sean Barrett back in the house. In summary on this one, Jazz Chisholm was the perfect cover choice for MLB The Show 2023. The Bleier Barnes trade feels nice. Upside there for the Marlins. Thinking about Jazz as well. Hitting in the 3 spot to me feels like the right spot for Jazz to maximize his abilities and get this rolling. Sandy Alcantara, is he going to be the same type of pitcher next his game to reflect some of the rule changes and the changes of personnel behind him? That's been Locked On Marlins. I've been your host, Peter Pratt. Of course, the UK GOAT, Sean Barrett, and we'll be back very, very soon. Locked On Marlins. See you soon.